Hey everyone, and welcome back to Healing Growth.
Glad to be back with you all today.
I'm Lucky, as always.
And I'm Mika, ready for another deep dive.
Always am. You know me. Today, we're kind of wading into some uncharted territory.
Mm.
Relationships,
Oh, yeah, those can get complicated.
big time. And sometimes it's not even like the other person, it can be like .us getting in our own way.
Oh, absolutely, like our own patterns and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And today, we're going to try to untangle one of those tricky patterns. We're talking all about the avoidant attachment style.
Ooh, a classic. And if you stick around for today's deep dive and want to hear more about relationship stuff, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment. We always love hearing from you.
Always do. Okay, so attachment styles. Those are like the blueprints for how we connect with people, right?
Yeah, kind of like,
Yeah.
some people are naturally more like huggy and affectionate, others need a bit more space. Everyone's different.
Right. And sometimes those blueprints, like you said, have some quirks. Like sometimes they can make us avoid getting too close to people.
That's our avoidant attachment style coming in. And it's important to remember that this isn't about judging anyone. Having an avoidant attachment style isn't a bad thing, it's just a way of relating.
Makes sense. So it's more about understanding ourselves better.
Exactly. And a lot of these attachment patterns actually come from our early experiences. Like, if vulnerability didn't feel safe growing up, we might develop this tendency to avoid it later in life.
Interesting. Okay, so let's get down to it. What are some of the signs that someone might be leaning towards the avoidance side? I know one of them is feeling kind of overwhelmed, like suffocated almost,
Yeah.
when things start to get too emotionally close.
Yeah. It's not that they don't care, it's more like things get too intense too fast and they need to take a step back.
Like needing a breather.
Yeah.
I feel that. Everyone needs their space sometimes, but for someone with an avoidance style, it's like way more intense.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine it like this. Think about a time when you felt like your personal space was being invaded, like someone was just too close for comfort.
Ugh, yeah, like being stuck in a crowded elevator or something.
Exactly. That kind of feeling can get triggered for someone with an avoidant attachment style when things get too emotionally close. And so they create distance to regulate those uncomfortable feelings.
Okay, so it's more about protecting themselves than it is about not caring about the other person.
Definitely. And often that need to protect themselves can kind of lead into the next sign, which is putting a really high value on independence, like maybe to an extreme.
Yeah, we all like our independence to some extent, right? And like having our own hobbies, our own time. But it's about finding that balance, isn't it?
Right. And for someone with an avoidance style, that balance can tip over, and that need for freedom can become like a barrier in relationships.
So what does that look like in a relationship?
Well, maybe they prioritize solo activities over a couple stuff. Maybe they avoid making future plans, even sometimes saying things like, I don't need anyone, or,
Oh, I get it.
yeah,
Like shutting down any conversations about being more serious or committed.
yeah, you got it. And this independence thing, it kind of ties into another pattern, keeping people at arm's length.
Oh, I could see that. Like, how does that show up?
Um, well, think about it this way. Have you ever been dating someone who, cancels plans a lot? Or maybe they dodge any conversations that get a little too deep?
Or like when you try to connect on an emotional level, they just kind of brush you off.
That's exactly what I mean. It can be really confusing, even hurtful for the other person.
Yeah, because I feel like they're constantly taking a step back when you're trying to step forward.
Totally. But for the person with the avoidant tendencies, it's often not even intentional. It's like a subconscious way of maintaining control, keeping those walls up to avoid getting hurt.
Makes you wonder what made them build those walls in the first place, you know?
Yeah. Right. And then there's another sign that can make those walls even thicker, struggling to express emotions. Ever felt like that? Like trying to share your feelings is just like walking on eggshells.
Oh, I feel that.
So imagine that, but like tenfold.
Yeah.
For someone with an avoidant attachment style, being vulnerable can feel super risky, almost dangerous.
I guess if you're used to protecting yourself, opening up feels like what? A weakness?
Kind of like that. It's like this fear that if they do show their true self, they'll be rejected, or maybe their feelings will get used against them.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
So they just keep it all bottled up inside?
Pretty much. And that, as you can imagine, leaves their partners feeling pretty disconnected. It's hard to build a close bond if one person's always holding back.
Yeah. And then I bet when their partner tries to bridge that gap to get them to open up, that's when we see the next sign. Getting annoyed by what they might perceive as neediness.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It's like, oh, Picture this, right? It's date night, everything's going great. You reach for your partner's hand,
Yeah.
and they pull away.
Or your partner wants some reassurance, maybe a little bit of affection, and suddenly you're like irrationally annoyed.
And it's not that the partner's being clingy or anything, it's just a normal human need for connection.
Exactly. But for someone with an avoidance style, it can feel like a demand, like back off, I need my space.
Right. Like those needs trigger all those old anxieties about losing themselves or feeling engulfed by the relationship.
Exactly. And when those anxieties get triggered and those needs aren't being met in a healthy way, that's when we sometimes see our next sign, a history of short-lived
No,
relationships.
the classic runaway pattern. Like as
Yeah.
soon as things start to get a little bit real, a little bit serious,
Yep.
poof, they're gone.
It happens. And it's not always intentional, remember. As intimacy builds, so does the fear of losing yourself in the relationship.
Yeah, and for someone who values their independence so much, that can feel pretty scary, huh?
It can. And it can lead to that cycle of jumping from one relationship to another, never really allowing themselves to fully commit.
So they never really hit that point where they have to face those deeper fears.
Yeah. And speaking of fears, that brings us to our final sign, feeling super uncomfortable with any kind of dependency.
Now, I know in any relationship, there's going to be a certain level of dependency, right?
Yeah.
Like we rely on each other for support, for help sometimes.
Right. Healthy relationships are all about interdependence. But for someone with an avoidance style, even that level of reliance can feel like a threat to their sense of self.
So even though it's totally natural and healthy to need your partner sometimes,
Yeah.
for them, it triggers that whole I need to be independent thing again.
Exactly. It's like their internal alarm bells are going off, telling them to pull back, reclaim their autonomy.
Okay, so that's a lot to digest. Anyone out there relating to any of this?
Hmm.
What do you do if you recognize these patterns in yourself?
Right. Like, is this a life sentence of emotional distance? No way. First of all, give yourself some credit. Awareness is the first step to growth, so just recognizing these patterns is huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And remember, it's not about beating yourself up. It's about understanding yourself.
Mm.
Where do these tendencies come from? How are they showing up in your life? And how can you start to change those patterns?
Right. And there are so many things you can do. Therapy can be really helpful. It can help you explore those early experiences that might have shaped your attachment style and give you tools to create healthier relationship patterns.
That makes sense. What else?
Even journaling can be a big help. Just
Yeah.
getting those thoughts and feelings out of your head and onto paper can give you so much insight. And, sometimes even small changes can make a big difference.
Like what kinds of changes?
Well, like, let's say you feel that urge to withdraw, like pull back from your partner. What if instead of acting on that urge, you consciously choose to lean in just a little bit? It's a tiny step towards connection. Over time, those little steps can really start to rewire those old patterns.
Wow, that's actually really inspiring. Okay, so before we wrap things up, let's do a quick recap for everyone. Feeling overwhelmed by closeness. Valuing your independence like it's oxygen.
Got it.
Keeping partners at a safe distance. Struggling to open up emotionally.
Yeah, those two.
Feeling irritated by your partner's needs. A history of relationships that just never seem to stick. And feeling super uneasy about depending on anyone. Those might all be signs of an avoidant attachment style.
Bingo!
And remember, we're not here to judge. We're here to help you understand yourself better. And we want to hear from you.
Spill the tea! Have you experienced these patterns? What strategies have helped you navigate them? Let's have a conversation in the comments below.
Seriously, we love hearing your stories and insights.
And for more deep dives into the fascinating world of relationships, make sure to hit that subscribe button.
See y'all next time on Healing Growth.
Bye for now.